Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 63 of the Highly Relevant Podcast, a pop culture show where we interview the journalists and the newsmakers about how they view and are shaping the most highly relevant entertainment stories of the week. I'm your host, Jack Rico, and if this is your first time listening to our show, thank you for listening. It really means a lot to me to have your ear. Well, now that I have you here, we're discussing the Oscar nominations this week with my good friend Wilson Morales from blackfilm.com. We will get to the deeper meaning of how these nominations are influencing our society and, of course, do some predictions on who will win. Also, the New York Times wrote an article this week called "After OscarsSoWhite, Hispanics Seek Their Hollywood Moment." It makes the point that Hispanic actors are in dire need for some needed on-screen inclusion in Hollywood, and so I talked to Brooks Barnes, the media and entertainment reporter who wrote the article, about what led him to write the piece and what solutions he can impart on us after 1 year of working on it. And finally, the 60th Annual Grammy Awards are this Sunday, the 28th, and Matt Fish, a hip-hop connoisseur, will help me make sense of how hip-hop and Latino music owned 2017 and what it will mean for the mainstream music industry if the mostly Spanish-language song Despacito wins record or Song of the Year. That, plus music suggestions for your playlist and the latest news in U.S. Latino and mainstream pop culture. Keep your headphones on. This is the Highly Relevant Podcast.
I'm John Bailey, Governor of the Cinematographers Branch and President of the Motion Picture Academy. This has been a remarkable year for the movies. Actors, writers, producers, and directors have given us films that not only entertain, but challenge us. There's been bold, adventurous work in animation, documentaries, and foreign language films. Visual effects, composers, and sound artists, production designers, editors, and cinematographers continue to raise the bar of their crafts, as do costumers, makeup, and hair artists. This is a landmark year to honor their achievements.
I want to welcome in now Wilson Morales, editor-in-chief of blackfilm.com. Wilson, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, it's good to be on.
All right, so the Oscar nominations came out this week. A lot to talk about, a lot to unpack and unspool here. But I do have to say, it has to be a great time to be covering Black pop culture right now. I mean, Get Out got a Best Picture nomination. Black Lightning is like the hot new show on TV. The whole Grammy record of the year category that's happening at the Grammys this Sunday here in New York City is ethnic, right? It's like the first time that a Caucasian artist actually wasn't even included in the record of the year. Tell me what it's like covering culture right now for you, for blackfilm.com.
Well, yesterday's Oscar nominations played out very well. You know, we got a lot of good nominees. We had 13 nominations for Black individuals. You know, last year we had 18, so it's not so much of a drop. Obviously, things are playing well on TV with The Chai, Black Lightning. You've got a new show coming up on Netflix called 7 Seconds. You know, the amount of people that got nominations for the Grammys also played well. So I guess as a journalist, there's a lot of good work to be covered.
Right. Now, you, as a journalist, you've been covering some really good work recently on blackfilm.com. Black Panther, you just did a set visit.
Well, we were invited last year, sometime around, I guess, January, almost a year ago, to go on the set of Black Panther, which is one of the highly anticipated films of the year. And we saw a number of things we saw actually a scene being shot, and they pretty much brought in a good portion of the main cast. We talking about the film at the time, you know, they couldn't say much because they were just in the middle of shooting. But there was a lot to be discovered in terms of what they saw on the set, the costumes, the production design. You know, we're only less than a month away from when the film is being released in theaters, and I think The audience are just going to go nuts from what they see. And, Disney and Marvel have done a good job as far as putting out the trailers and clips, but also holding back on a lot so that the audience could be desired to see it.
Now let's talk a little bit about the Oscars. Diversity and inclusion mostly, which is after the hashtag OscarsSoWhite, everybody just seems to have like a magnifying glass to try and, get somebody from the Oscar committee who didn't vote for a diverse person in a particular category. Us Hispanics, what can we expect? It's predictable. There's like not one single Latino was nominated in the acting category, but that's a whole different conversation. Should be celebrated, though, that African Americans are all over the Oscars this particular year.
Well, here's the thing I always felt. It's not so much about OscarsSoWhite, and I don't want to keep bringing that up every year. I think it's all about opportunity. If you give the right person, the right film, the right project, the same amount of marketability, I guess if you're saying as their white counterparts, and you expose those films to the right people so that they can see it, then they'll be in contention. Obviously, we throw the word snub very much when people don't get in. And somebody said sometimes it's like, it's not about snub, is that they don't get the votes. So now we have to go ask ourselves why they didn't. Why is it they didn't get the votes? This particular year, we got the votes. Get Out got in. Mary J. Blige got in. I don't think for somebody like me who covers film, in particular the Black aspect of it, there wasn't so much of someone who did not get it. You can make a case for Tiffany Haddish, but I'm not going to complain when we got Mary J. Blige in as well as Octavia Spencer.
Right. So Get Out got 4 Oscars. Jordan Peele in particular, man, this dude is like on some Lin-Manuel Miranda type of thing where it's just surreal, like the level of success that he's going through. First-time director, debut film, Get Out, and gets 4 Oscars. He gets an Oscar for producer, which is Best Picture of the Year, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay.
Yes,
that's crazy.
He's one of the few people, not just Black, few people who've gotten that amount of nominations in 1 year. So that's amazing for one guy on his first film.
Right.
So he's got a tough task when he comes up to his next film.
Now, one of the things that I particularly just didn't see, and I disagree with it, is that in the Best Acting category or Best Actor category, Daniel Kaluuya, the star of Get Out, was nominated. I got to be honest with you, man. I've seen some great acting, all the way from Daniel Day-Lewis's My Left Foot to Robert De Niro's Taxi Driver and Awakenings to Robin Williams' Good Will Hunting performance. I cannot put Daniel Kaluuya on the top of the best actors in Hollywood this year. I just can't. I appreciate the movie, but I didn't think that his acting carried the whole thing. I mean, yes, what's mostly shown in mainstream commercials and media is the sunken place in his eyes. That was a very physicality, but his performance, his acting, I just didn't feel was
you're
memorable.
In a minority. You're in a minority. You can go over every Oscar year in which there was one individual that probably shouldn't have got in there. And especially here's a case where like, hey, he got in because of the marketability. The inclusion, his SAG nomination, that speaks a lot, especially when we're talking about like, you got to get him out there. So like there've been performances that have been subpar, but because the person is well known, they get in. At the end of the day, Meryl Streep got her, I think, 21st or 22nd nomination, and one can go back and say, okay, did she really deserve all 22 nominations?
Right.
And start nitpicking. So, like, I'm not going to complain about Daniel Kaluuya. He's not so much the front runner as Gary Oldman is. The fact that
right, but you could have given that to someone else that probably was more deserving of it. Another one was Denzel Washington. We on this podcast, you and I spoke. You had just seen Roman J. Israel Esquire, up in the Toronto Film Festival, and you told me that movie wasn't very good.
The movie wasn't good, but his performance was, and I think he got in because the SAG people and actually the Oscar voters, who are basically a good portion of the SAG individuals, voted for his performance as opposed to the film. And at the same time, James Franco, who many believe would have gotten a nomination, somehow declined once those allegations came up against him.
Let's look at Best Director, because I know that this is something that a lot of people are very happy about. We have a Hispanic in Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water, Lady Bird with Greta Gerwig, female. I think that's the first time since Catherine Bigelow, probably, that there's been a female director nominated. Jordan Peele, obviously African-American. And finally, Christopher Nolan gets his first director nomination, and Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, which is interesting because that movie wasn't really touted as special during the award season until the Oscars decided to say, you know what, we're going to kind of buck that trend, and we're going to nominate it because we feel it's special.
Yeah, that was more like a Johnny Come Lately, and they made an impact, I guess, to a lot of people. And I think also with the rest of the nominees, this is a year where I think part of social media, in a way, had something to do with Jordan and Greta getting in. Both of them have equally good films, but, there's always, you always have a good solid 7 to 9 directors, and some either got in because of politics and some got in because their films were good.
Are you upset that Dee Reese, director of Mudbound, wasn't nominated, nor was the film?
No, Netflix has always had that challenge of trying to convince people that like they're at the studio, but there's those who find it their way of putting out films, day in, and you also can see it online, takes away from the actual film business per se, but they did break ground in getting 4 nominations in the top categories as far as supporting actress, adapted screenplay, that they got the first female cinematographer ever nominated.
Rachel Morrison.
So they should take comfort that they at least got named in some of those areas. It's almost the same way when HBO first started coming in, they wouldn't let the cable companies compete with the Emmys, but eventually they look where they are now.
What do you think overall about the work in diversity and inclusion that the Academy has done this year? Are you pleased, or do you think more could have been done?
I think there's a lot of work there. I think it's a matter of marketing. I think there's always plenty. Speaking from the Black perspective, the work is there. Maybe we could say we need more in terms of leading females.
What would make you happy, Wilson? Let me ask you this, because I think you also speak for the industry of African Americans who want to see more. Like, what would you need to see on the Oscar nomination list? Does it need to be almost all Black?
No, I like this. It's not about color. If the product is good, just get them promoted. I don't want the race to be mixed. It shouldn't be that way. It should be about the work itself. If the work is good, then it should get in. Getting in is one thing. Winning is another thing. So sometimes it's all about getting invited to the dance, and it's a matter of just having the right product to get invited to the dance. The people decide afterwards. So it's not so much about, I don't want to see this person get in or get, if their product is good, get them in.
Finally, before I let you go, Wilson, quick question. Best Picture, we got 9 this year. And I don't remember the last time we got 9, but it's Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Who wins it?
3 Billboards.
Why?
I think it's a film overall that, you start thinking about what you can watch at home. If I personally had to say which one you're comfortable with, 3 Billboards. I know there's been some talk, backlash, and so forth, but all of these films are going to get that sort of talk. Dunkirk is more of a technical film.
Shape of Water?
Shape of Water is a fantasy romantic film. That's genre specific in a way. So it all depends what your taste is.
What about Lady Bird?
Lady Bird, I wasn't that crazy over Lady Bird as others have been. It's a decent film.
I think it's one of the best films of the year, and I think it has a great shot in winning the whole thing. Politics outside of it. I saw 3 Billboards too. I've seen all of these movies except Phantom Thread. Call Me By Your Name, I thought it was a good film, well acted. I thought it had some very poignant, human moments. Darkest Hour, I thought it was more about the performance of Gary Oldman. Dunkirk, I just disliked almost at every level. Get Out, I thought was the highlight of the year and an important film for this year. Lady Bird, it was pure joy. That's all that's the only way I can describe it. It's pure joy. Phantom Thread I didn't see. The Post I thought was underwhelming to me. I thought there's better movies like Spotlight that is a better journalism movie. Shape of Water I truly enjoyed. I thought it was the most well balanced of them all. I thought it needed a punch towards the end. And Three Billboards, I thought it was, again, well acted, one of the best ensembles of 2017. I thought that the comedy had a bite to it, so it was in your face. And yes, great movie, but I don't know, man. That was a film that you had to kind of it's a lot of layers, and you didn't exactly know what it was. So Lady Bird to me is the one that best sums up sort of the best feeling I had for a movie of 2017.
We're just going to have to see what happens come March.
All right, Wilson, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you coming out. And by the way, why have you been whispering the whole podcast?
I haven't been whispering. I guess it's the tone on how you're hearing me. I don't know. I speak clear enough.
All right, Wilson, thanks a lot, buddy. Take it easy.
All right, take care.
It's time for JackedIN. Let's begin with the top movie news of the week. Steven Spielberg is remaking the classic film musical West Side Story and is currently looking for Latino actors. In contrast, the National Hispanic Media Coalition will protest the lack of Latino representation in movies at this year's Oscars. Warner Brothers is planning an animated Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat. Netflix is in talks to acquire the Cloverfield movie sequel. Anne Hathaway's Barbie movie moves to 2020. Peter Jackson is working on a World War I film documentary premiering in London at the London Film Festival this fall. And movies releasing this week are Maze Runner: The Death Cure, Lebanon's foreign film Oscar nominee The Insult, and Christian Bale's violent western Hostiles, which opens wide. In TV news, Meryl Streep has been cast in HBO's highly anticipated sequel, Big Little Lies 2, with Nicole Kidman, Reese Witherspoon, and Shailene Woodley. CBS is rebooting Murphy Brown with Candice Bergen returning for all 13 episodes. John Malkovich has been cast for the third season of Showtime's Billions as a Russian billionaire. And Natalie Portman will be hosting SNL after more than 10 years on February 3rd. Switching over to music, the Grammys are this Sunday night on CBS, and Halsey, Rhapsody, and Kelly Clarkson will wear white roses to show solidarity with the Time's Up movement. Janet Jackson, Mary J. Blige, Miguel are headlining the 2018 Essence Music Festival. Elton John announces retirement from touring. Lin-Manuel Miranda is releasing for the second time this month another Hamill drop. Italian balladeer Laura Pausini releases a new single titled Hazte Sentir, and Drake and reggaetonero Bad Bunny might be collaborating in the future. And in digital and social media news, ESPN is adapting its popular First Take show for Facebook. Apple orders drama series from director of La La Land. MoviePass, the movie theater subscription service, snaps up the art heist film American Animals. Instagram stories can now include GIFs, and Twitter is reportedly working on a video sharing feature that mimics Snapchat. Joining me now on the Highly Relevant podcast is Brooks Barnes. He's a media and entertainment reporter for the New York Times who wrote an article this week called After OscarsSoWhite, Hispanics Seek Their Hollywood Moment. Thanks for being on the podcast, Brooks.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
What inspired you to write this article?
It's one that has been in the works for a very long time, almost a year, actually.
Wow.
Not consistently over that time, but last year around the Oscars, there were a couple articles on industry blogs just saying, hey, wait a minute, as everyone was congratulating the Academy for nominating 6 Black actors, there were no Hispanic nominees, and that caught my attention. And I then met with I set up meetings with a couple of the activists, and I wanted to write about it for a while, but kind of never had the moment or peg. And so just kept in touch with those folks, and finally we saw, as once again on Tuesday, tomorrow morning, they are not going to have any, almost assuredly, any Hispanic nominees. It seemed like the right moment.
In the article, you made mention that I believe in the last 20 years, 3 Hispanics have been nominated in the acting category, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even more starkly, there's never been a Latina Best Actress, and
That's
you
crazy.
have to go to never, and you have to go back to the 50s to find
Rita Moreno, probably.
Right in supporting, but you have to go back to the 50s to find the Best Actor. So it's really stark. And then when you combine that with some of the research that USC and UCLA have done about just not Oscar related, but characters on screen, it's really it's the most underrepresented group by a long shot. 18% of the population over the last, I think it was 10 years in the USC study, only 3% of on-screen characters are Hispanic. That's an enormous disparity.
You spoke to Chrissy Hauberger. Now, for those of you that might not know who Chrissy Hauberger is, she was the founder of Latina Magazine, and she's now at CAA in charge of, I believe she's the head of multicultural talent at CAA. What were some of the questions? What was the interview with her like, and what stood out more than anything? What were some of the salient answers that she gave you?
That was her inclusion. I thought was important because she's one of the leading people working inside the business, and her work is not just in one lane. It's for minorities across the board in Hollywood. And what struck me is how, I guess, patient she's had to be. She talked about how when she founded Latina Magazine and started going to advertisers, 2 decades ago, that people, I can't remember what the quote was, but it wasn't in the story, but they treated her like a foreign, an alien from another planet, something that they'd never seen before.
Incredible.
And she kind of felt the same way when she arrived in Hollywood. She's been at CAA since 2005. And her point was, I'm less interested in, cosmetic change, like, in a one moment scenario, representation in one Oscar class, for example. She's working what she describes as from the ground up, touching every rung is how she puts it in the business to try to create lasting change.
Right.
But there's just a lot of frustration among these people about sort of why the broader public doesn't care more, and why the on-screen representation is just so bad.
Right. You actually wrote, and I thought very accurately, and I'll quote you here. You said, quote, "But the underrepresentation of Latinos, unlike the sidelining of other minority groups, has never truly entered the public conversation." Now, this is very true. And you go on to make 2 points about it. Can you take us through those points?
Well, one point, and this comes from the reporting, it's, the group is enormous. You've got, we looked at it in its broadest sense, which, anyone coming from a Spanish-speaking culture, that includes anyone from Venezuela to Spain to Puerto Rico. It's hard to get everyone to care about the topic
because they're all different cultures with different traditions and different mentalities. And
right.
Kind of to reinforce what you're saying, there's barely any commonalities outside of the language between someone from Argentina and someone from Mexico. And so it's hard to get in Argentina and Mexico in the same room, especially when it comes to soccer, they're enemies, to actually unify themselves in a particular goal or objective, which is to get more Hispanics on Hollywood. So it was very interesting what you wrote about that.
Well, thanks. Some of the actresses who have been advocates, America Ferrara, for example, have said that they've been frustrated that Latinos in America have not been more supportive in some cases of films that represent them, and that is one way to get the attention of Hollywood, obviously, through their checkbooks. The other thing that I heard that I have to believe that there's some truth to is, and this came most forcefully from Alex Nogales, who's president of the National Hispanic Media Coalition. He said, look, we have tried to be much more consensus building. Let us come in and explain to you, while some other groups have been much more
Aggressive.
forceful, aggressive. Al Sharpton picketed the Oscars a couple of years ago. Spike Lee stood in front of at the Governor Awards, which is the Academy, and basically, shamed them, like, enough is enough. And there haven't been similar firebrands, at least in Hollywood, from the Hispanic side, in part because of just the whole problem, right?
Right.
You have to have power and stature to begin with.
Right. And the power and the stature is the fact that 18% of the United States are Hispanics. We're the largest minority. But when it comes to race, Brooks, why do you think that much of the conversation in America is limited to black and white and not Hispanic?
That's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think that part of it is there's more of a tradition in Hollywood of black filmmaking. It tends to be like on the side, obviously, but it's something that the studios understand. I don't know.
There's a couple of key issues about why Hispanic actors aren't being nominated for acting awards. And these were some of the thoughts that I took away from your article. And I started thinking to myself, number one, in order for a Hispanic actor to be nominated, they have to be hired in movies.
Right.
They have
the
to
jobs
be
have to be there.
Right. The jobs have to be there too. If they're not hired in movies, it's because studios aren't giving them any quality lead roles to get. And so, I mean, they say that stars aren't born, that they're made. So
Right.
The question is, why isn't Hollywood making Latino movie stars? What's precluding them from doing that?
Well, one is there's a lot of pressure on every front to manufacture openly gay stars and manufacture stars with disabilities. And I hear that from studios. I'm not excusing that. I'm just explaining their point of view.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there's also, there are people on the popular movie side, the Oscar Isaac in Star Wars, or
who's from Guatemala, right?
Right. Or, when I asked studios, tell me what you're doing in this, a lot of the focus was in animation. You mentioned Coco earlier. Well, we have, 3 Latino stars in forgetting what it is, Hotel Transylvania 3.
Right, Selena Gomez.
Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so that tells me that studios are focusing on the demographics that respond to certain movies. Animation in particular has a higher support if you look at the demographics from Hispanic ticket buyers. They think it has something to do with a tradition of going to movies as a family. And so that kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier about if there's support in at the box office that gets the attention of Hollywood, and like, oh geez, we need to start focusing more. And that's the only thing they pay attention to: money and I guess
right.
controversy. Public embarrassment.
And I thought that money was a given, except that we're already the number one movie going demographic in the United States, and we've been like that for almost 2 decades. And so if money isn't doing anything, right?
Right. So and one person I spoke with made the point, and studio executives have said this to me too, that, well, we're already they're already over-indexing. They represent, I think, 18% of the population, but 26% or 23% of frequent moviegoers. So we don't need to work harder to get them. We need to work harder on these other groups. The problem with that is that if you look deeper at the data, the number of frequent Hispanic moviegoers is going down.
I did read that. So. That was a little shocking to me. Any reasons why? What you would attribute that to?
I think, well, they would say just because they're not, their stories and faces are not being seen, not being represented, and eventually it's a not paying attention to a loyal customer.
Or maybe just fatigue overall of the just the same sort of type of movies, the same type of stories that no longer connect with them today, I guess, in a more diverse world. Speaking about studio executives, Brooks, before I let you go, I know that many of them declined to speak to you, which you said in the article. Any idea why?
Well, because they don't want to put themselves out there to be, publicly. It's the Hollywood way. No one talked about Harvey Weinstein for 3 decades.
Right. Kudos to Thomas Rothman, the chairman of Sony Pictures, who actually did talk to you, but the rest didn't.
Is one of the few that actually will stand up and say something, whereas studios, it's pretty much business as usual to circle the wagons, and they all want to know, well, who else is talking, and we don't really play that game. We say you can either comment or not.
Right. And then finally, Brooks, what do you think is the solution for increasing Hispanic talent in front of the camera? You did all this research. You've been talking about it for close to a year. Did you come up with any takeaways of a solution of how we can move forward from all the reporting and all the things that you've been hearing for the last year or so?
I do think it goes to Christy Hauberger in some way. You have to have people hiring the position to hire people, the people at the studios who are thinking about these faces and not picking from the same group that they represent or the same pool of this is how we've always done it. When that happens, you start seeing results. Disney has made a very concerted effort from the top of the company,
yes,
to be more diverse in its movies. To the degree that there's pushback on Star Wars, and you saw Coco. Black Panther is coming up from Marvel, which is going to be it, and so, but that's one studio, and the others are because they're in a less solid business position for the most part, are less willing to take those chances.
Right, because there's just more risk for failure, et cetera.
Right.
Even though when you have a show like Hamilton on Broadway, right, and you have someone like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's already proven twice that you can have multicultural stories win and have the acclaim and the box office success, plus Coco, which I just spoke to Lee Unkrich about, and it's made over $600 million, and that's not including markets that haven't even opened in Ireland, Japan, et cetera. I don't know where they keep on thinking that risk is a problem. And if I may add and offer also a solution on my end, when you look at sort of the whole spectrum, I think a couple of things need to happen. We need to have more people of diversity in the positions of power at these studios.
Right.
To kind of because I always felt like people hire what they know, right? Like if I'm comfortable with you getting along with me and we have common like-minded right. They get hired. But when it's too culturally different, there's a particular sense that I want to work with people that kind of get me, right? And so I think we need to have people in positions of power that are diverse to be able to kind of have a better eye for talent. And then secondly, once we have, for example, the Three Amigos, and as much as I love them and the success that they have and what they represent in our community in terms of triumph, they're leading the way for it. If you look at Alejandro González Iñárritu, Guillermo del Toro, and Alfonso Cuarón, the last time they've made movies, English language movies, but the last time they hired a lead Hispanic actor between both has been between 10 and 20 years.
That's a real sore spot. We didn't get into that in the article, but, when we talked about you have to be it takes people in with power to rattle the studio gates. Those three men have power. Those directors,
and they're not hiring actors who are of Hispanic origin to be in their movies. And I've always scratched my head about that. It's almost like, and I don't want to necessarily assume this, but it seems like it. At least the optics look like they left the Hispanic industry and they're not looking back. They're now in Hollywood, in America, entrenched there in this club. And I don't feel that they're necessarily helping the cause, right? Where they could, because more than anyone else, they understand it. So for me, if you're a director or a screenwriter include roles that are Hispanic. I mean, we're seeing in comic books how Peter Parker is now an African-American or an Afro-Latino in Miles Davis. These are the things that I think that they could do better, between putting diverse people in positions of power and the people that are already in power that are Hispanic, to kind of throw the ladder and let some of the great talent come in, new talent too,
Right.
Brooks, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're in Utah right now. You're covering Sundance. What are you working on?
I am covering Sundance, and it's interesting that if this is the, what do you call it, the field team. That's what I get for trying to make a sports reference, but you know what I mean. For big Hollywood,
right?
Then it's pretty promising, because there are. You spoke of Hamilton. The Hamilton actors are sprinkled all the way through these films here. There are a lot. It's diversity in every single film almost, and so that's pretty interesting.
That is interesting. Brooks, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. Appreciate the conversation, and good luck out there at Sundance.
Thanks. Okay, bye.
Before I talk to my next guest, Matt Fish, about the Grammys, here are 3 tracks you might want to add to your playlist this weekend.
Don't make me wait. Don't make me wait. True love, true love, true love you.
Don't Make Me Wait, Sting featuring Shaggy.
Make me wait. Don't make me wait. True love, true love, true love you.
Esse é o tempo que quero com você me envolver, me imaginar.
Imagem, Mahmundi.
Sentido tanto pra te dizer, me envolver, me imaginar.
On the best coast, Friday. We don't get those. Do you wanna come zone in the sunshine? Baby, yes, no, baby, yes, no.
Sunshine, Kyle featuring Miguel.
La 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 la, make me wanna say la 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 la.
Matt Fish is a staff writer and Spotify playlist curator at The Hot New Hip Hop, a site dedicated to hip-hop news, and he's also the creator of the Hip Hop Classics podcast, a show where he pays tribute to the greatest hip-hop albums in the form of these mini audio documentaries. I've had a chance to listen to it. Very cool. Matt, it's great to have you on, man.
Oh, my God, Jack, thanks so much. That was quite the audio intro. I could not have said it better myself.
Appreciate it, man. Before we talk Grammys this coming Sunday, I want to know how you got into hip-hop, and if you can tell me a little bit about the podcast. I heard the Jay-Z greatest of all time discussion. I thought that was my favorite episode so far.
Well, I guess I'll start with the podcast and work backwards. I have done many podcasts in my life. When I say many, this is, I think, my 4th podcast in total. I've been a radio professional for the last couple years as well, and I was looking to talk about the genre of music. I have a huge passion for it. I started as a bar and a club DJ about 10 years ago, and just really worked up my appreciation for the genre, especially the classics. And I think that, in the age of SoundCloud rappers and, quality control and the whole trap sound, I think that, sometimes the classics like the Biggie and the Tupacs and the Jay-Z's, as you said, sort of get lost in the shuffle. And I did some research, found that there wasn't really anything celebrating said geniuses of this music genre that we like to call hip-hop or rap music. So I decided to take that upon myself, and 24, 25 episodes in, I honestly can't remember how many I've published by the time this will air, but it's somewhere in there, and we're having a great time doing it. And, the Jay-Z greatest of all time discussion sprang from the buddy that I had on to talk about it with me, cousin AJ. He and I went to the show up here in Montreal, which is in Canada, for anybody listening worldwide on the internet. And it was a great time, and it really put his career into perspective. So it was a really fun conversation.
Now, you're Canadian, you're from Montreal. How does a Montreal guy get into hip-hop?
Montreal has a really diverse music scene. There's a lot of different cultures that sort of congregate under the party scene in this city. So you get a little bit of everything. You get a little bit of hip-hop and rap, reggaeton, world beat, EDM, house music. And I'm going I mean, you have specialty DJs in this city as well, but it's not uncommon for you to hop between 6 or 7 genres over the course of a bar or a club night. So, you know,
Wow.
it wasn't actually that hard to get into it, and you bring other people's influences into it as well. And I was always just a music junkie, you know, before becoming a rap and hip hop fan to a great degree. I was into a lot of the rock classics as well, so I'm very well versed in, I will say, multiple genres of music, and it's just so much fun for me to continue listening and continue discovering and just continuing to spread that passion of music with other people.
That's great, man. So let's talk a little bit about the Grammys. I know you've been following it, obviously, because your podcast and hip hop music is very omnipresent in this edition, the 60th edition of the Grammys that's happening this Sunday. So let's start right off the bat. Record of the year. Let me just outline the nominees. It's Childish Gambino with Redbone, Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee featuring Justin Bieber with Despacito. You got Jay-Z and the Story of OJ for Record of the Year, Kendrick Lamar's Humble, and Bruno Mars' 24K Magic. Now, as I understand it, this is the first time, I believe in history, you could correct me there, that not one white artist is a part of this Record of the Year, which is incredible because hip hop music has been so popular and so extremely consumed and had such influence globally. I mean, Montreal is like a great, example of that. Who do you think wins this one? Because everybody here, if I just close my eyes and I just kind of pick one out of nowhere blindfoldedly, I'm fine with either.
I agree with you. I'd be fine with most every song here winning. I mean, if I'm honest, Childish Gambino's Redbone is probably on the outside looking in, just in terms of maybe the slightly greater quality of the other 4 songs here. I mean, look, you were talking about the historic night it's going to be for artists that are, part of identified minority groups in the United States, and certainly hip hop is a big part of that as well. It was a narrow miss, I think, for this happening the last few years. Taylor Swift's 1989 and Adele's 25 sort of thrust them into that conversation in other years when hip hop was really dominant as well. If I had to pick, though, I hate to shy away from the hip hop artists here. For me, it's a toss up between Bruno Mars' 24 Karat Magic and Despacito. I would like to say Despacito wins it because of, just earth-shattering, record-breaking numbers that it pulled in terms of streaming and all that this year. But I could see it going Bruno's way. He had an amazing year, an amazing tour, and, that song was everywhere on the radio, streaming, in people's minds and, eardrums for the better part of 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I really think it's a strong song, and it could very well take home a Record of the Year.
Interesting you say that, because Jay-Z is the most nominated artist of the night with 8 nominations. Jay-Z, according to you in your podcast, he could probably be the greatest of all time. Why isn't this an easy choice for the Grammys to pick him? And why was he not your preferred choice?
Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'll use an example from another big award show, the Academy Awards, when Leo DiCaprio won for The Revenant a few years ago, Best Actor, and that was, in many people's estimation, the Oscars sort of giving him this, kind of like career achievement in the form of a Best Actor award, right? So the way I see it falling Jay-Z's way for 444 for all of the nominations is sort of as a career summation, because a lot of people are thinking that 444 could be his swan song. It's going to be hard for him to top this record. He's getting close to 50 years old. And yes, in my mind, he could very well be the greatest MC of all time, but that doesn't mean that the Story of OJ, that album 444, was the strongest album or the strongest song I heard this year. It doesn't necessarily even put it in the top 3 in terms of Jay-Z's canon. I just think it took everybody by surprise. It took the world by surprise a little bit in terms of how good it was after Magna Carta sort of really was met with, I would say mostly disappointment when it came out 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I keep forgetting it's already 2018, Jack. But anyways, I think, like I said, in terms of a career summation, I can see this going well for Jay-Z, but I have to give respect to stuff like what Bruno did and Despacito as well.
Right. So Album of the Year, now that we're talking about albums, here are the nominees: Awaken My Love by Childish Gambino, Jay-Z's 444, Kendrick Lamar's Damn, Lord, out of nowhere, a part of this hip-hop group, basically, with Melodrama, and Bruno Mars with 24K Magic. What do you think is the best album of 2017?
You have to sort of remember to separate sort of the best in quality from what could be a bit of a popularity contest when it comes to the Grammys, and that's usually how it works. I will say, though, I really did love Lord Melodrama. And
I did too.
Coming out of nowhere a little bit, but for me, it was one of the more impressive records this year. And, you know, sort of like a Childish Gambino, maybe not the same amount of exposure, but if you haven't listened to it, get on Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, whatever you're using at home, and check out Melodrama. It's great. You know, I actually think Jay-Z has a better opportunity to win Album of the Year for 444.
Oh, okay.
Because as a sum of its parts, I think it was a great narrative and a great sort of moment of remorsefulness for him. And, you know, people were saying how he sort of confessed to what Beyonce brought up in Sorry with her whole Lemonade album of his infidelity in their marriage. And I mean, you know, people are talking about, oh, this guy and how can he live with himself? Well, he wrote this album and then he went out and toured it. So he's got to get up there and sing a song like Family Feud with 20,000 plus eyes on him every night. And just that sort of narrative in this album. And of course, Smile, the beautiful, beautiful song that he wrote about his mother and her struggles with coming out. And that's actually being honored by the GLAAD Association, I believe, in the United States. So, you know, it's a big moment for him. And, you know, if I had to pick between record and album of the year, I think that Jay-Z's 444 could sneak up on people and win that one.
So Song of the Year is Despacito, Jay-Z's 444, Issues by Julia Michaels, 1-800-273-8255 by Logic featuring Alicia Cara and Khalid, and then That's What I Like from Bruno Mars. My pick for this one, you know, I love all the songs, but I think this is a hands down no brainer. The Grammys has to give it to what Despacito does. Number one, because it went against all odds. No one betted on this song for making it all the way to the number one chart in the Hot 100 and becoming 16 weeks, tying Mariah Carey's record, and then becoming the most streamed song in the history of streaming, or in the history of music all along. What it did is it kind of just said, look, Spanish language music has arrived, and it's in the form of Despacito, and it's a great song too. But they're going against titans here with Jay-Z, Bruno Mars, who performed twice at the Super Bowl and has an amazing fan base. Is Despacito the winner here?
I think it could be, but I don't know if it's as clear cut as potentially some other people might make it out to be. I do also like Bruno Mars's That's What I Like in this spot as well. On and Off was at the top 10 of the Hot 100 for 30 to 40 weeks, if I remember correctly. We did a countdown.
Never reaching number one, though.
Never reaching number one, and that's a good point. But in terms of, you know, again, just potential staying power, I don't know where or how far Despacito fell off once it left its number one perch. But, you know, I'm just sort of trying to paint Despacito having a little bit of competition here. I think it walks away with Song of the Year because, like you said, the records it set, the impact that it made, and it is going to go down in history. Like I Got a Feeling and like something like Uptown Funk, it is going to be one of those all-time party anthems when it's all said and done. So I think that the Grammys maybe can't overlook that, but you never know.
So let me ask you this, because I think this has a much deeper overall impact. If Despacito wins, I would say that song, there's two versions of it. There's the original Spanish language version, and then there's the Justin Bieber version. There's been a lot of controversy behind that song in particular because Luis Fonsi heard that, well, let's put it this way. Justin Bieber sort of treated that song like a side hustle project, like just like a whimsical sort of thing that he wanted to do, and never really learned the songs. We know what happened at the nightclubs. He started calling Despacito burrito and Doritos. So there was a certain disrespect for the culture, the language, the artists, and the song itself in what it meant. Luis Fonsi has been very careful in not giving any credit to Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber has never sang the song publicly. not on any TV show. He hasn't done a televised version of the song with Luis Fonsi or Daddy Yankee. And, with all this controversy, let's just say it wins. What do you think that would mean for Spanish language music moving forward? Would this mean that having Song of the Year for a Spanish language song at the Grammys and Luis Fonsi holding a Grammy for Song of the Year, I think they'll be the only time in history that has ever happened. Does that say that we will all now support Spanish language music moving forward? Would this mean the Latino boom of Latin music, Spanish language music in the American music industry?
I mean, I think it's already happening. I think that the plethora of really hot songs that came out in 2017 that had more than just a little Spanish flavor to it. We're talking about guys like J Balvin and Migente, and there was a whole bunch of great Latin music that came out this year. And I do think Despacito, in that regard, deserves the award. As far as the whole Justin Bieber controversy goes, Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee have distanced themselves from his contribution to the song. Yeah. And, I hate to be the bearer of bad news for people who are saying the Latin version should be nominated over the one with Justin Bieber attached to it. But the one with Justin Bieber, the remix, is the one that got played on radio stations in North America. That was the one that went to number 1 on Billboard. That was the one that broke the streaming record. So they are going to honor that version of the song. In terms of its impact on Spanish music, we've had sort of Latino and Latina top 40 superstars before.
Yeah, like Camila Cabello this year, Cardi B, who's Dominican as well, with Bodak Yellow. She has the Latin trap version of that in Spanish. I mean, we've definitely seen that, and I just happen to think that, I don't know, man. I've been in this place before where we have a song that shoot like Enrique Iglesias when he had Hero, he had the Spanish version, and we had that Latin explosion happen. And then it kind of just died out. And so I'm afraid that might happen. But moving forward, let's talk a little bit about the best rap performance, because I know this is your area of expertise. The nominees are Big Sean with Bounce Back, Cardi B, Bodak Yellow, Jay-Z, 444, Kendrick Lamar and Humble, and then Migos featuring Lil Uzi Vert with Bad and Bougie. Who wins this one? This is a hard one to pick out.
It's a tough category. I think that, a lot of artists sort of raised their games this year. Migos and Cardi B, that's their first introduction to what I would call a mainstream audience. And, Kendrick Lamar was a known commodity, but he went a little more commercial with the album Damn in 2017, and Humble, is a direct result of that being so popular. If I had to pick between those, to me, I see Humble as the leader by maybe a fraction, just because of how much of an impact it made just as a crossover single. It wasn't just popular in
its genre, right?
Settings, in rap settings. Anytime a song can go from a very, closed off subgenre of music almost, because, rap and hip hop music like to sort of build these walls around their genre, and crossover songs that do get out sometimes are accused of being quote unquote sellouts. I don't think that's the case with Kendrick, and I don't think that's the case with Humble. But that being said, keep an eye on Cardi B and Bodak Yellow. That was a song that came out of nowhere. And
I was just going to say that.
Now, oh yeah. I mean, she's proven now with the remix to the Bruno Mars song Finesse that is super hot on the charts as we record this pod. And, she's not going to be a one-hit wonder. She's going to be around for a little while yet. So that could be sort of her starting moment in terms of Grammy recognition.
The Cardi B phenomenon is something that I just can't even grasp. She's Dominican, but has that sort of, black culture in her because she's from the South Bronx. So it's hard not to be influenced by black culture. But this is a song that Janet Jackson on tour started singing. She started covering the song in her tour. And then I just saw the other day that Jennifer Lopez did the same thing. So if the impact on a song with major heavyweight iconic artists, and that song is being covered by them on tour and not necessarily Humble by Kendrick Lamar, and you were just talking about how a song, if it crosses over into other settings, then that is the power of the song. How is it that Bodak Yellow isn't the lock in this category?
Well, I think it has to do with a lot of people's sort of precious idea of what the best rap performance is. And, we can get into a whole long discussion, and I have a classic hip-hop podcast, right? So now we're getting into this thing of what hip-hop is supposed to be and what it really is to a lot of people in the real world. I don't disagree with you, but, that whole sort of hard image of rap and hip-hop that, people are trying to shed these days, and you mentioned the Logic's 1-800 single, that's a perfect example of that. But, there are a lot of people who thought that Cardi B's track was kind of trashy, kind of generic, kind of just going for the big paycheck. And she has since admitted that there's nothing wrong with that, and I agree with her. But, I think also it's important for people not to get swept up too much in the Cardi B phenomenon and focus on the actual songs at hand.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So speaking of that, the best rap song, Bodak Yellow, Cardi B, Chase Me, Humble. Chase Me. Then you got Humble by Kendrick Lamar, Sassy, and The Story of OJ. Who wins here?
Oh, man. I mean, so performance is typically sort of, more of an all-encompassing thing. It's, because Humble had a great music video, and it's this really galvanizing piece of music. I think Humble could take this one as well, although if The Story of OJ wins Record of the Year over something like Despacito or the Bruno Mars track, that goes for rap song too. You cannot give it Record of the Year and then not give it rap song. You feel me?
I totally hear you.
I think a lot of these genre songs and albums or whatever will sort of be predicated on what happens with the bigger awards at the Grammys. And I know this is typically done in reverse and they save the bigger awards for last, but there will be a trend there. It's a really close category to call. Again, Bodak Yellow shouldn't be counted out. So I think that Humble, The Story of OJ, and Bodak Yellow are your three front runners. I think potentially Kendrick might have a slight leg up on both Cardi B and Jay-Z, but you never know. I mean, as you were saying, there are so many ways this could go. It's going to make the Grammys interesting.
Absolutely. And I happen to think that the album and the song Humble, I think it's this year's Lemonade. It's the most artistic and the most progressive evidence of the evolution of hip hop, and where it could go. It's not the hip hop that I grew up with. I grew up with Public Enemy, and I grew up with De La Soul, and it was just a different type of hip hop. So for me to listen to this, I'm always looking for like the hook, like that melody hook, that hip hop beat, and Kendrick Lamar just kind of smashes all the conventions, of what hip hop music is. Yeah. And so for artistic reasons, and if the Grammy is a prestige award show sort of awarding art, that to me would probably be it. Then finally, in the last category I wanted to talk to you about is best rap album. I think it's important to understand that, this is a collection of music. And I remember going back all the way to the Frank Sinatra era, the Capitol Records, when he created the first concept album. And in that concept album, every song kind of went with each other. It synced together. It kind of told the story. Rap albums today, I feel, are sort of also telling a story, right? From beginning to end. So it's important to kind of just take the sum of all the songs together in an album and kind of evaluate it from that point of view. The nominees are here: Jay-Z's 444, Kendrick Lamar's Damn, Migos with Culture, Rhapsody, Lila's Wisdom, and then finally Tyler, the Creator, Flower Boy, who just recently came out and said that he should be winning the rap album. And he went on boasting about why, the reasons. But if you look at this nominees, is this an easy one with Kendrick Lamar or Jay-Z, or does Rhapsody, Migos, and Tyler, the Creator have an edge here?
It is an easy one based on what the vote's going to be. It's going to come down to Humble and 444, and I suppose it's a coin flip based on which one you thought was the better record. I think, like I said before with Album of the Year, I think Jay-Z's got a better chance of winning the album awards because of 444's strength as a sum of its parts over his singles. Damn can't be counted out either. Tyler boasting about how he should win for Flower Boy is just Tyler being Tyler. I also really liked Layla's Wisdom from Rhapsody. I think she's a great female artist who, is presenting herself has maybe sort of like an antithesis to a Cardi B, right? There's no talk about bloody shoes and all of this sort of stripper iconography, if you want. You know, it's a very grounded, very soulful, very emotionally sensitive album, I think. So that would almost be like a creative dark horse for me. Do I think it's all that possible? Not really. If you put a gun to my head for a pick, it's probably 444, but Dan is not that far behind.
Wow, man. Matt, thank you so much for being on the podcast and kind of giving us your insights, you know, and your acumen here on hip hop music, because it's so heavy on hip hop this particular year, which is great for the genre and for the industry. But before I let you go, I really want to ask you about where do you think hip hop is today and where it's headed?
It's a pretty loaded question. We could sit here and again make a whole podcast just answering that one query. I'll give you sort of the nutshell answer, though. I think it's different. A lot of people want to, again, you know, hip-hop is such a contentious genre of music when people are comparing history and talking about the greatest of all time and who had the best bar in this year and who had the best album. And, you know, a lot of people are older heads, I would say, potentially openly disrespecting the younger generation that's coming up and saying, you know, they haven't got the goods and the younger generation's giving it back at them. And, you know, it's not even just the rappers. I mean, Lonzo Ball famously said that Nas isn't real rap, and Nas has maybe the greatest album of all time in Illmatic. And I mean, that's a subject that's been debated for a long time. So just like the rest of the U.S., I think that hip hop is a pretty divided music genre right now. But I do think that, you know, there's a lot of great music coming out. And I think that with the evolution of streaming, with the evolution of how people are consuming music on the internet, there is so much more opportunity for artists to get their name out there and to have their own Despacito or their own Bodak Yellow. So, you know, I'm actually really excited for what the future of rap and hip-hop holds.
Matt Fish, hip-hop connoisseur and guru. Thank you very much for being on the Highly Relevant podcast. Go check out his podcast. It's called Hip Hop Classics. And hopefully from this conversation, man, maybe you can do a podcast on sort of redefining the lines of what hip-hop music is. I'd love to hear your take in maybe in an hour session of where you think that all this is headed to.
Absolutely, Jack. Hopefully we can get that down soon.
And that's it for episode 63 of the Highly Relevant podcast. I'd like to thank Brooks Barnes of the New York Times, Wilson Morales of blackfilm.com, and Matt Fish from the Hip Hop Classics podcast. And thank you guys for listening from your favorite streaming platform, wherever you may be. I'd love to hear from you. If you can, leave me a review on our show's iTunes page, or you can help us share it on your social media apps. Tell your friends all about it. If you can, have them subscribe to the show. Hope you enjoy your weekend, watch the Grammys, and stay connected with us via showbizcafe.com. Enjoy your weekend, guys, and see you next week on another episode of
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.